Kelly was a millionaire known all over the city. He owned large companies and lived in a mansion bigger than most could imagine. His home was filled with luxurious furniture, shining floors and large windows that gave breathtaking view of the garden. Everyone respected him for his wealth and success, but what they didn't know that Kelly was lonely in his heart. Kelly's wife, Ida, was beautiful and elegant, the type of woman who loved fine things. She spent most of her time shopping, hosting expensive parties. Although their life looked perfect from the outside, Kelly and Ida didn't share much love anymore. Over the years, their marriage had grown cold. They hardly spoke unless it was about business or attending public events together. Ida seemed more interested in showing off her wealth than caring for her husband. In immersion, there were many workers, cooks, gardeners, drivers, and housemaids. Among them was Alice, a young girl in her early 20s. She came from a poor family in the village and had traveled far to find work in the city. Alice wasn't like the other maids. She was kind, quiet, and always smiling, even when the work was hard. She worked in Kelly's mansion because she needed to send money back to her sick mother in the village. While most people in the mansion did notice her much, Kelly had started to pay attention to Alice. She moved gracefully around the house, cleaning, organizing, and doing her job without complaint. Kelly couldn't help but admire her. Unlike Ida, Alice was humble and hardworking, and something about her caught his eyes. At first, Kelly would only watch her from a distance. He wasn't sure why, but he felt a strange connection to her. Sometimes after long days at work, Kelly would sit in the living room as Alice moved around dusting the shelves or mopping the floor. He would smile at her and she would smile back, shyly, and return to her work. Despite her sweet nature, Alice wasn't treated well by Ida. Ida was strict and mean to all the workers, but she seemed to have a special dislike for Alice. Whenever Ida caught Alice resting for even a minute, she could shout, "Alice, why are you standing there, doing nothing? Get back to work." Alice would nod quickly and return to her chores, trying her best to stay out of Ida's way. Ida's harshness hurt Alice, but she never showed it. Deep inside, Alice knew she needed this job. Without it, her family in the village wouldn't survive. Kelly noticed the way Ida treated Alice. It bothered him, but he couldn't understand why his wife was so cruel to such a gentle girl. He felt an urge to protect Alice, but he didn't know how to without causing a fight with Ida. The more he watched Alice work, the more he found himself drawn to her. One afternoon, Kelly saw Alice crying in the garden. He had come home early from a meeting, and there she was, sitting on a bench, wiping her eyes with her apron. Kelly's heart inched for her. Without thinking, he walked over to her. "Alice," he said softly, sitting next to her on the bench. "What's wrong?" Alice looked up, surprised to see Kelly sitting beside her. She quickly wiped her tears and tried to smile. "It's nothing, sir," she said, her voice trembling. Kelly shook his head. "It's not nothing. I see how hard you work, and I see how Ida treats you. You don't deserve that." Alice looked down at her hands. "I'm just a maid, sir. I don't have a choice. I need this job." Kelly reached out and gently placed his hands on hers. "You're more than just a maid, Alice. You're kind and hardworking person. You deserve better." Alice blushed, feeling both comfortable and confused by Kelly's words. No one had ever spoken to her like that before. She didn't know what to say, so she simply nodded, thankful for his kindness. From that moment on, Kelly couldn't stop thinking about Alice. He found excuses to talk to her, asking about her family, her life in the village, and how she was doing. Each conversation made him feel closer to her, and he realized he had feelings for Alice. Feelings he hadn't felt in a long time, not even with Ida. But deep down, Kelly knew that falling for Alice was dangerous. He was a married man and Alice was just a maid. If Ida ever found out, it would cause chaos in the mansion. Still, Kelly couldn't deny the connection he felt with Alice, and slowly, day by day, their bond grew stronger. Days turned into weeks, and Kelly and Alice's bond grew even stronger. Kelly would find reasons to be near Alice, offering her small breaks from her work or giving her tasks that would allow them to talk more. Alice, although shyly and uncertain about the growing closeness, found comfort in Kelly's kind words. He was different from everyone else in the mansion. One day, Kelly invited Alice to join him in the garden after work. He had noticed how she loved flowers and often lingered in the garden after her tasks were done. They walked among the blooming roses, enjoying the cool breeze of the evening. "Do you miss your village, Alice?" Kelly asked gently as they walked side by side. Alice nodded, her eyes looking far off. "I do, sir. It's where my heart is. My family is there, and I miss them every day." Kelly could sense the pain in her voice, and it touched him deeply. He couldn't imagine what must be like to be far from family, working hard in a mansion where you were mistreated. He had everything, but here was Alice working tirelessly to support her family back home. "Do you think Ida will ever treat me better?" Alice asked softly, surprising Kelly with a question. Kelly paused. He wanted to tell Alice that Ida would change, but deep down, he knew his wife. Ida wasn't the type to show kindness, especially not to someone like Alice. Her arrogancy and needed to control wouldn't allow her to treat Alice as anything more than a servant. "I can't promise that Ida will change," Kelly said carefully, "but I want you to know that I'll always be here for you." Alice looked at him with wide, grateful eyes. No one had ever made her feel important, like her feeling mattered. Kelly was the first person to make her feel seen, and it stirred something in her heart. That night, Kelly couldn't sleep. His thoughts were filled with Alice, her kind smile, her sad eyes, and the way she leaned up whenever they spoke. He knew it was wrong to feel this way about her, but the feelings were growing stronger day by day. Ida, on the other hand, had no idea about the growing bond between her husband and Alice. She was too busy with her parties, her shopping trips, and maintaining her status among the wealthy wives in the city. To her, Alice was just another maid, someone to order around and criticize. But for Kelly, Alice was becoming more than that. She was becoming someone he couldn't imagine his life without. And he knew that he had to do something about this feeling soon. It was a quiet evening when everything changed. Ida was out at one of her usual social gatherings, and Kelly had stayed home, pretending to be tired from work. In reality, he wanted to spend time with Alice. As the rest of the mansion staff retired for the evening, Alice stayed behind, finishing her tasks. Kelly watched her from the doorway of the living room, feeling his heart race. She was dusting the room, humming a soft tune to herself. The soft glow of the lamps made her look even more beautiful, and Kelly knew he wouldn't hold back any longer. He stepped into the room, making Alice jump slightly in surprise. "Oh, sir, I didn't see you there," she said, her hands on her chest. Kelly smiled softly and walked towards her. "You don't have to call me sir, Alice. When it's just us, call me Kelly." Alice blushed. "I couldn't, sir. I mean Kelly." Kelly's smile grew wider and he stood close to her, feeling the warmth between them. He reached out gently, brushing a strand on her hair behind her ears. "You are so special, Alice," he whispered, his voice barely audible. Alice felt her heart pounding in her chest. She didn't know what to say, but she couldn't deny the growing attraction she felt towards Kelly. His kind words, his gentle touch, they made her feel things she had never felt before. Before she could respond, Kelly leaned in and softly pressed his lips against hers. Alice froze, her eyes widened with shock. She had never been kissed before, and now, here she was, kissing a billionaire. Her mind raced with thoughts. This was wrong, wasn't it? But at the same time, it felt so right. Kelly pulled away slightly, his eyes searching hers. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I couldn't help myself." Alice stared at him, her lips still tingling from the kiss. She didn't know what to say or do. Part of her wanted to run away, but another part of her wanted to stay. "It's okay," she said finally, surprising herself with a word. Kelly smiled, relief flooding over her. He gently took her hand in his. "I don't want to hurt you, Alice, but I can't ignore how I feel about you anymore." Alice looked down at her hands, feeling a mix of emotions. She had never expected this to happen, but now that it had happened, she hadn't denied the connection she felt with Kelly. But what about Ida? What would happen if she finds out? "I don't know what to do," Alice admitted, her voice trembling. "We'll figure it out," Kelly assured her, his voice steady. "Just trust me." For the next few weeks, Kelly and Alice continued their secret relationship. They stole moments when Ida wasn't around, sharing kisses and whispered conversations. Kelly's feelings for Alice grew stronger every day, and he knew he wanted to be with her no matter what. But it wasn't long before Ida began to notice something strange. Kelly had become distant from her more than usual. He no longer seemed interested in her social gatherings or parties she threw. Whenever Ida asked him what was wrong, Kelly would just shrug and say he was tired from work. One evening, Ida sat in the living room watching as Kelly and Alice passed by each other in a hallway. She noticed a brief glance they shared. The way Kelly's eyes lingered on Alice for just a second, Ida's heart began to race. Could it be that her husband was interested in a maid? Hey! If you found this story interesting and amazing, give it a thumb up. Leave something in the comment section. And please, if you've not yet subscribed to this channel, kindly subscribe and share it. Let a friend and a friend and a friend listen and watch this amazing story. As the thought took hold of her, Ida's suspicion grew. She began to watch Kelly more closely, noticing how he always seemed to be nice to Alice, offering her small smiles and gentle words. Ida's jealousy and hunger started to build inside her, but she kept it hidden for now. She needed to be sure before she made any accusations. Ida couldn't sleep that night. She tossed and turned, her mind filled with doubts and hunger. She didn't want to believe it, but the evidence was clear. Kelly had grown distant, and it seemed like he had taken a special interest in Alice. The thought of her husband falling for a maid made her blood boil. How could he, a billionaire with everything, stoop so low as to fall in love with a servant? She had to do something. Ida wasn't a type to sit and watch as her world crumbled. If Kelly had feelings for Alice, she needed to put an end to it before it went any further. But Ida knew she couldn't control Kelly directly. He was stubborn, and she didn't have any solid proof yet, so she decided to be clever. The next morning, Ida began her plan. She started paying extra attention to Alice, watching her closely and giving her more chores around the mansion. "Alice!" she called out sharply as she sat in the living room. "Come here!" Alice hurried in, her heart racing. She knew Ida didn't like her, and whatever Ida called her, it was usually to complain about something. "Yes, Mama," Alice replied politely, keeping her eyes down. Ida crossed her arms, looking at Alice with a cold smile. "You've been doing a terrible job lately. The kitchen isn't clean, the floors are a mess. Are you slacking off?" Alice's face flushed with embarrassment. She had been doing her best, but with all the extra tasks Ida had given her, it was hard to keep up. "I'm sorry, Mama. I'll work harder." "You better," Ida snapped. "And from now on, I want you to stay out of the living room when I'm here. You're always in my way." Alice nodded, biting her lip. Ida's words hurt, but she didn't urge. She couldn't afford to lose this job, no matter how harsh Ida was. As Alice hurried off to complete her chores, Ida smiled to herself. She had begun to isolate Alice from Kelly, hoping to break the connection between them. Every time Kelly tried to speak to Alice, Ida found a way to interrupt them. She sent Alice to work in different parts of the mansion, keeping her from Kelly's sight. But despite Ida's effort, Kelly and Alice found ways to be together. Late at night, when the rest of the staff had gone to bed, Kelly would meet Alice in the garden. Under the moonlight, they would sit together, talking about their hopes, their dreams, and their growing feelings to each other. As the weeks passed, Ida's jealousy grew more intense. She could no longer ignore the way Kelly looked at Alice or the secret smiles they exchanged. She tried to control the situation, but nothing seemed to work. It was as if Kelly didn't even care about her anymore. One evening, Ida overheard Kelly and Alice talking in the garden. She had been walking by the open window when she heard their voices, and her curiosity got the best of her. She stood still, listening carefully to their conversation. "I can't keep this secret much longer, Alice," Kelly was saying, his voice low but serious. "I'm in love with you." Ida's heart pounded in her chest. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. Her husband, the billionaire she had built a life with, was confessing his love to their maid. She felt a wave of rage wash over her, but she forced herself to stay calm. Bursting now would only make things worse. She needed to handle this carefully. "I'm scared, Kelly," Alice replied softly. "What if Ida finds out?" Kelly took her hand, his voice filled with emotions. "I don't care about Ida anymore. She doesn't love me like you do. I want to be with you, Alice. I don't want to hide our feelings any longer." Alice clenched her fist, her anger boiling over. How could Kelly betray her like this? How dare Alice, a mere maid, think she could steal her husband? Ida knew she needed to act quickly. If Kelly was serious about leaving her for Alice, she had to put an end to it before it was too late. The next morning, Ida woke up with a clear plan in her mind. She was done playing nice. If Kelly thought he could fall in love with Alice and get her with it, he had another thing coming. Ida decided she could make Alice's life so miserable that she could have no choice but to leave. "Alice!" Ida's voice echoed through the mansion as she stormed into the kitchen. Alice jumped, nearly dropping the plate she was holding. "Yes, Mama. I want this entire house clean from top to bottom. And I want it done by this afternoon." Ida snapped. Her eyes flashed with hunger. "Every room, every floor, every single corner. Do you understand?" Alice looked in shock. It was an impossible task. The mansion was so big and there was no way she could clean everything in just few hours. "But Mama, I don't want to hear any excuses, Ida," Ida interrupted, her voice rising. "If you can't do it, then maybe you don't belong here at all. Maybe I should find someone else to take your place." Alice's heart sank. She needed this job, but there was no way she could finish what Ida was asking. She nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. "I'll do my best, Mama." As Alice hurried to start cleaning, Ida watched her with satisfaction. She knew that by the end of the day, Alice would either fail or quit out of frustration. Either way, Ida was determined to get rid of her once and for all. Kelly arrived home early that evening, tired from a long day at work. As he walked into the mansion, he noticed something strange. The house was unusually quiet, and there was a sense of tense in the air. He called out for Alice, but she didn't answer. Worried, Kelly searched the mansion until he found Alice in one of the upstairs rooms, scrubbing the floors and tears streaming down her face. She looked exhausted, her hands red and raw from the work. "Alice!" Kelly rushed to her side, kneeling beside her. "What's going on?" Alice looked up at him, her eyes filled with sorrow. "Ida, she told me I had to clean the entire mansion by this afternoon, or she would fire me." Kelly's face darkened with hunger. He had known Ida was harsh, but this was too much. He couldn't stand by and watch as she mistreated Alice any longer. "That's enough," Kelly said firmly, helping Alice to her feet. "You are not doing this anymore." Before Alice could protest, Kelly stormed downstairs, his heart pounding with fury. He found Ida sitting in the living room, sipping tea as if nothing was wrong. "Ida!" Kelly's voice was sharp as she entered the room. Ida looked up, raising an eyebrow. "What is it, Kelly?" "What are you doing to Alice?" Kelly demanded, his voice shaking with hunger. "You can't treat her like this." Ida sat down, her teacup, narrowing her eyes. "Oh, I see. What is this about? You're defending her now? The maid you fall in love with?" Kelly didn't deny it. "Yes, I love her, and I won't let you treat her like this anymore." Ida stood up, her face twisted with rage. "You choosing her over me? After everything we've been through?" Kelly took a deep breath, his voice calm but firm. "You and I haven't been happy for a long time, Ida. I'm tired of pretending. I want to be with someone who makes me feel alive again. And that person is Alice." Ida's eyes burned with fury as she realized Kelly was serious. Her mind raced, thinking of the years she had spent by his side, building a life, sharing his success, and now he wanted to throw it all away for a maid. It was unthinkable. "You throwing away our marriage for a servant?" she shouted, her voice trembling with disbelief. "What will people say, Kelly? Do you even care?" Kelly sighed, his expression pained. "This isn't about people, what they think. It's about what makes me happy. And right now, I'm not happy with you. I haven't been for a long time. Alice, she's different. She makes me feel alive." Ida's heart twisted painfully. It felt like a knife had been plugged into her chest, but she wouldn't give him the satisfaction of seeing her break. "If you think I'm just going to let you humiliate me like this, you're wrong," she snapped, her voice cold. "I'll fight you, Kelly. I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of man you really are." Kelly shook his head sadly. "You can do whatever you want, Ida, but this is over. I'm moving out." Ida was left standing there, speechless, as Kelly turned his back on her and walked away. The final blow had been struck. There was no turning back. Alice sat nervously in her small room, thinking about what Kelly had said. He had promised to stand up for her, but she couldn't shake the feeling of dread that had settled in her chest. What if Ida convinced him to change his mind? What if Kelly's feelings for her weren't as strong as he claimed? Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock on the door. Kelly entered, his face mixed with exhaustion and determination. "I've told Ida," he said quietly, sitting beside her on the bed. Alice's heart skipped a beat. "What did she say?" Kelly sighed, running her hand through his hair. "She wasn't happy, but I've told her the truth. I'm leaving her, Alice. I want to be with you." Alice felt a surge of relief, but it was quickly followed by fear. "Are you sure, Kelly? What if she tries to ruin you? She's your wife after all." Kelly took her hand in his, looking her in the eyes. "I don't care what she does. All I care about is you and the baby. We'll figure out this together, I promise." Alice's eyes filled with tears. She wanted to believe him, but deep down, she knew Ida wouldn't let them go so easily. Ida wasn't one to accept defeat. After Kelly left the house that evening, she sat alone in the dark, her mind racing with plans. She had spent too many years building her life with Kelly, and she wasn't going to let a simple maid ruin everything she had worked for. She needed a way to strike back, something that would hurt both Kelly and Alice. She thought about going public, exposing Kelly's affair to the media, but then another idea crossed her mind. Something much more personal. Ida knew that Alice's world revolved around her job, her future, and now the baby she carried. If Ida couldn't keep Kelly, she would make sure Alice's life became a living nightmare. It wasn't long before Ida put her plan into action. The next day, she confronted Alice in the garden. Alice had been planting flowers, trying to keep her mind off the turmoil in the mansion, when Ida appeared. Well, Ida sneered, her arms crossed. "Look who thinks she's special now." Alice stood up slowly, her heart racing. "Mama, I don't want any trouble." Ida laughed bitterly. "Trouble? Oh, you've already caused enough trouble, haven't you? Stealing my husband, getting pregnant with his child. You think he'll stick around forever? You're just a fling, Alice. Once he gets bored of you, he will throw you out like garbage." Alice's face paled, but he stood her ground. "Kelly loves me. He told me so." Ida's eyes narrowed. "Love? You're so delusional. If you think that man knows what love is, he only using you. And when he's done, you'll be left with nothing. No home, no job, and no future." Alice felt tears sting her eyes, but she refused to let Ida see her cry. "I won't let you hurt me, Ida. Kelly and I are going to be together, no matter what you say." Ida's expression darkened. "We'll see about that." Later that evening, Kelly sat in his office thinking about the events that had unfolded. He had left Ida, but the guilt weighed heavily on him. He had loved Ida once, but their relationship had soured over time. He knew he had made the right choice in leaving her, but the thought of the mess he had created still bothered him. Alice was different. She was kind, understanding, and everything Ida wasn't. But he couldn't ignore the fact that his action had caused so much pain. As much as he loved to move forward with Alice, he wondered if he had the strength to handle what was coming. As he sat there, lost in thoughts, the door opened and Alice stepped in. "Kelly," she said softly, "can we talk?" Kelly nodded, gesturing for her to sit down. "What is on your mind?" Alice hesitated for a moment before speaking. "I'm scared. Ida, she's not going to let this go. She's going to do everything she can to ruin us." Kelly reached out and took her hand, his expression serious. "I know, but we'll face it together. Whatever Ida tries, we'll get through it." Alice's eyes filled with tears as she leaned into Kelly's arms. "I just want us to be happy." "We will be," Kelly whispered, holding her close. "I promise." Few days later, Kelly and Alice's fear came true. Ida wasted no time in launching her first strike. He called up the media and spread rumors about Kelly's affair with Alice. And soon, the story was plastered all over the medias. The billionaire's scandal. Kelly leaves his wife for a maid. Kelly was furious when he saw the headlines, but there was little he could do to stop the gossip. Everywhere he went, people whispered behind his back, judging him for leaving Ida. Even his business partners began to distance themselves, worried about their reputation. Ida had succeeded in her first act of revenge, but she wasn't done yet. Alice sat in her small room, clenching the newspapers with trembling hands. Her face stared back at her from the front page. The words, "The Billionaire's Maid," embezzled in bold. She had never been in the spotlight before, and now the entire world knew about her relationship with Kelly. She felt exposed, valuable, and scared. The headline painted her as a home creaker, the woman who stole a wealthy man from his wife. People who had been friendly with her now looked at her with a disdain. Whispers followed her everywhere she went. She could feel the judgment in their eyes. Alice's heart inched as she thought about how Ida had managed to ruin her name so quickly. She had only wanted love and a family, but now it seems like the whole world was against her. Kelly came into her room later that evening, his expression grim. He had seen the newspapers too, and he knew how much it was hurting Alice. "I'm so sorry," Kelly said, sitting beside her. "I didn't want this for you." Alice wiped away the tears that had started to fall. "I just wanted us to be happy, Kelly, but now I feel like we're at war." "We are," Kelly agreed, his voice low. "But I'm not giving up on you, Alice. No matter what Ida throws at us, we'll fight back." Alice looked at him, hoping flickering in her eyes. "Do you really think we can?" Kelly nodded. "Yes, we can and we will." "Are they really safe?" What is Ida's next plan? Part 2 is coming. Wait for part 2. And thank you so much for reaching this far. Thank you so much for watching. Kindly I remind you, if you've not yet subscribed to this amazing channel, kindly subscribe, give a thumb up to this video, and leave something in the comment section. See you in our next part. I love you all.